All right, we are live. We've got Jamie Renda on. So kick us off, Dave.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Tooele Happy Hour podcast starring Jared Anderson and David Weiss, where if head trauma had a podcast, this is what its tune would sound like. Jared, this is the TrumpTater. Do you remember the TrumpTater at all the political rallies that we went to?
Yeah, and she showed up at everything. I didn't know it was a she. I thought TrumpTater was a tater. But
there was someone behind that costume. Imagine that.
Well, I have to say, and this is a note to you, Jamie, that every time you showed up, you just stayed in character. You didn't talk. You kind of danced around and gave out a lot of hugs. So that's.
Well, I have to be clean. That wasn't me. I was walking with Trump.
Really? Who was dressed up as TrumpTater?
Everybody always wants to know, but it's not who was dressed up. It was the TrumpTater was there.
I like it.
Sounds like a secret.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. Well, anyways, so tell us about your inspiration. How did you design the TrumpTater?
Well, I owned a baked potato shop called Brixton's Baked Potato. And during the election, I initially wasn't a Trump supporter, but during the election, somebody said Trump looked like a potato. So that kind of caught my eye a little bit. So I thought I'd do this contest about people drawing Trump as a potato. But I never ended up doing that. But after Trump was elected, people were saying he was a Trump-Tater, like a dictator. And I thought, no, we can't let that happen. So I went through like 4 different artists to come up with my version of what the TrumpTater ought to look like. And I said, I'd like a character, whether you love him or hate him, you can love the character. Mm-hmm. And something kind of like SpongeBob. And so I finally had an artist that put it down, and the TrumpTater was born. And so then about a year later, I was able to create a 3-dimensional TrumpTater.
Okay.
The rallies.
If only you'd owned a Cheeto shop. But
yeah, but it's the definition that matters on a TrumpTater.
That is true. That is
Did you
true.
read the definition?
I did not. What's the definition?
Okay. Trump in the dictionary means to outclass, outshine, outperform, to defeat someone or something, a dependable and exemplary person.
Okay.
So you add the suffix to it, ater, like an administrator, dictator, means someone who has those qualities. So TrumpTater in all reality is a real definition, and that's what I want to get out there, is that Trump is a winner. He's someone who outclasses, outshines, and outperforms, defeats others.
Yeah, that is that I don't know.
It's one way to put it.
It's novel what you did. Now, do you still have the baked potato shop?
I didn't. I sold it a year ago.
Sold it a year ago.
I could focus in on my political and causes and my nonprofit cause.
So tell us about your political and nonprofit causes.
My outreach has been to Black Americans in the conservative movement for about 23 years. And it started in South Carolina. And you may or may not appreciate my initial launch, but I lived in South Carolina where the Confederate battle flag flew in the House and Senate chambers and on the Dome. And
No, that was their state flag.
No, it wasn't their state
It
flag.
wasn't.
No,
Who
3
had-
flags. They had the American flag, the South Carolina flag, and the Confederate battle flag.
Okay.
Now, Mississippi, it's their state flag.
Yeah, okay, Mississippi. All right.
But South Carolina, and David Beasley was the Republican governor there at the time, and he actually lost his re-election because he attempted to take down the Confederate battle flag off the Dome while he was governor.
Okay.
And so I went into the NAACP and said, look, I'm conservative, but I don't think a non-sovereign flag should fly in a sovereign location, and I'd like to help. And went in 4 times. They'd never get back to me. Long story short, they had cut a deal with Governor Hodges, who was the Democrat that got elected, that they wouldn't bring it up in his first term. The Black Caucus made an agreement that they wouldn't bring it up. And so I started an organization called Two Flags in 2000 and brought together Republicans, Democrat, the business community, religious community, and everybody told me it couldn't be done, but the flags came down in July of 2020. Unfortunately, it went up on the Confederate monument, and I told him at that time that's going to come back and bite you, and it did. In 2015, Nikki Haley took it down. But just a little history, and I'm pretty fast on this. It went up in 1939 in pretty much a direct opposition of an anti-lynching bill, a federal anti-lynching bill in the House chambers. It went up in 1956 in the Senate chambers, and the state of Georgia changed their flag at that time in direct opposition of Brown versus Board of Education. It went up on the Dome in 1961 under Fritz Hollings. It was the governor, but became a senator, a Democrat. And again, in direct opposition, I think, the civil rights movement. So there's nothing virtuous about when it started flying. Strom Thurmond was a senator in 1939. He was running for the Dixiecrat Party, and they started using the flag at that time when he ran for the Dixiecrat Party. So just, there's a lot of other history, even from the beginning, that is just not necessarily good. But I mean, just the Civil War itself is most of the foot soldiers were not fighting for slavery. So there's a lot of mixed messages in that. But the war we're in right now, I mean, we're lied to all the time on why we're fighting wars. So
we're lied to every day and everything. And this is one thing I don't think the Republicans should ever get involved with, trying to defend General Lee's battle flag, which is flown by Democrats up until the, mid 80s is when they started giving it up. I think Republicans should just be like, okay, yeah. If you want to get rid of it, get rid of it.
Hey, Jamie, let me ask you this about that particular incident, because here in Utah, we're going over a flag incident ourselves. Now, when that battle flag came down, was that a ballot initiative voted on by the people, or were these dictates from the elite class that were elected to represent the people?
no, that was voted on by the House and Senate and approved by the governor at the time. As a whole, I think I made a big effort to publish the information. Most people who lived in South Carolina really thought, similar to Mississippi, that the flag had been flying, since the Civil War. And so there was an educational process that was involved in that. We had, big businesses on our side too, and small business. I even got Bob Jones University on board once they understood the history behind it.
Right.
So once I laid out the history of, most people couldn't really defend it flying in a sovereign location. We didn't really pick apart the flag. I just picked apart that it shouldn't fly in a sovereign location. It shouldn't fly live on State House property.
Well, yeah, and it doesn't. You only want flags that represent the full populace to fly, and that flag obviously leaves out some of the populace, and it leaves them out not because of decisions they made, not because of intentions in their life. It leaves it out because of just how they were born. And but
I want to point out an interesting statistic at that time, because I put all the House and Senate members, Democrat and Republican, and if I pulled out the black legislators from the Democratic side, the same proportion of Republicans supported the flag coming down as Democrats. And one of the things, to date, there has never been a black Democrat on a statewide ticket. Senator Scott is the first. Nikki Haley being the first minority. Again, a Republican. Senator Scott is first black on a statewide ticket. And I told him back, this was 23 years ago, and the friends that I was working with at that time, both on both sides, I said, I promise you it's going to be a Republican Party that will elect your first statewide black on a ticket, even though blacks make up the majority of the Democrat Party in South Carolina.
That's interesting. And I'm always a little hesitant to let my feelings about these flag things go, but I really feel like to solidify something like that, you need a popular vote, just like we're doing on the ballot, or the ballot initiative here in Utah. We want the people to have the final say on the flag matters, and it would really solidify the fact that this is wrong or this is right when the people speak. And even though we do have representatives for us in office, it just really puts the nail in the coffin when the people get to put on ballot really strong emotional issues like that and end it.
Well, and I'm all for you on the Utah ballot. On this particular one, I would not say that because no one ever approved the flag going up in the House.
Yeah,
or in
and
the
it's
Senate.
it's
And
not a
we're on the
one to
dome.
it's not a
Yeah.
1-to-1 comparison.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
they weren't changing the state flag in opposition to federal civil rights actions.
But they didn't change the state flag.
Yeah, no,
So-
that's I'm explaining to Dave
Yeah.
that in opposition to federal civil right actions, correct actions, the state, who at the time was angry that the feds were encroaching on their rights to carry on with Jim Crow or Jim Crow-like laws,
Yeah.
raised that flag up a flagpole. That flag wasn't voted in. That's not a state flag. It was just kind of they were flipping the bird off at the feds, and then it sat there for so long, and it shouldn't have happened in the first place.
No, I'm aware of that, Jared, but I'm just saying, when you let the people speak and when they vote, you know where the consensus stands. And I think there's something important about that our legislation needs to take into consideration for this sensitive subject, such as our flag being changed here in Utah. And it didn't happen back then for that particular incident that she's referring to, but had it happened and it was a ballot initiative and the people spoke, there could be no going back on whether or not it was right or wrong, because I'm pretty sure the people would have said, take it down. And when the people speak, it just holds so much more authority than when elected officials vote.
But speaking of the ballot initiative here, because of my involvement in that debate, I often had times people who were pro the Confederate flag staying on the dome and in the House and Senate chambers challenge me on the American flag and say, well, the American flag was this or that. And so I look at what's happening now with when you have 17 states changing their flags spontaneously all at the same time. You know that there's a bigger initiative behind that than just Utah decided to change their flag. Ultimately, the goal is to change the American flag. And that's what people need to wake up to, is that symbolism is what unites us. And if they can change the American flag, they know that that would divide us as a country. And so the motives behind the people, and I'm not saying Senator, is it McKay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not saying that's his motive. I'm just saying somebody's motive is out there to take away our symbols that unite us together.
I wonder what they'd change it to. It's a
I don't
big
know.
question. I imagine it'd be, if they had the druthers, it'd be red.
Yeah, something fairly generic and with not very much meaning to it.
Okay, so before we carry on, can you do me one favor though?
Okay.
Can you hop up and pick up or have your son hold the Trump-Tater
Come
costume
over and get the TrumpTater.
into camera, just so that we can just show everyone what it looks like. We'll just have you slide out of the way and he can hide his face behind it. But just so
Oh, okay. Well,
everyone
actually,
can.
he can just put it on top of his head too, though.
Oh, he can just put it on. That's a great idea.
Well, he doesn't have the whole outfit, but here, Brittany, you want to help him here? Lift it up.
You want me to put on my?
Yeah, put it on.
And this is just so everyone can see the
I
Trump-Tater.
should have the. Come over here, Jacob. What happened to?
All right, Jacob, back up a little bit. Back up a little more. There we go. Perfect. All right. Now, picture that, but now it has a lower body too, and then little skinny black arms poking out and it's dancing. And that's your Trump-Tater.
Now, this thing will show up at all the political events. Hey, is there a way to request the Trump-Tater to show up at events?
Or for parties.
We were going to do that at one time, but my life's so busy. So if somebody really wants it and they're willing to pay some young athletic guy to come perform, we would love to have him out more often.
That's great. You should Maybe you could franchise the Trump-Tater.
Well, I hope to. I mean, my goal a couple years ago, Jacob, can you help me get back on this? I lost him again.
Oh, you can't see us? Well, we're still seeing
Okay,
you.
there we are. Okay.
Okay.
So my goal was to have the Trump-Tater out for a Halloween costume several years ago.
Oh.
Maybe one day we'll get the Trump-Tater out. I have like four versions. I have 3 blow-up ones. I took one to Washington, D.C. And to 2 of the rallies, one in November of 2020 and one in December 2020. We were almost there, and on January 6th. My son that just modeled the Trump-Tater character said, I missed my opportunity. If I'd been there on January 6th, nobody would know who the, what's the guy with the horns?
Yeah, the shaman, QAnon shaman.
Nobody would remember the shaman if the Trump-Tater had been there.
Yeah.
But,
It's a good thing that he was not there, because right now we have a lot of people rotting in prison for really meaninless political strife.
Well, political prisoners got a political prison. So now, of course, we have you on here to talk about John Sullivan, and you have a movement to have him held accountable for all of his actions. Of course, he was in jail out here about, I don't know, a quarter of a mile south of where we are right now at our county jail for a little while, but then he kind of got scooped up and let go by, I presume, the feds or someone. What's going on there? What are we looking at with John Sullivan?
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because obviously on my handout, somebody pointed out that he did spend more than 24 hours in jail. That was in D.C. when he was arrested and then let go. Mm-hmm. How long did he actually spend in the Tooele jail?
I'm not sure. I think a couple weeks.
Okay, a couple of weeks.
But he never got tried. He was just held.
Yeah. But a couple of weeks in Tooele jail versus the D.C. jails that most of these January 6 people have been held.
Mm-hmm. And mistreated and put in solitary confinement and abused. And there's even reports of violence used against them. I mean, let's lay this out. I know none of that happened here in the Tooele jail. I know he's treated well here because I happen to know a handful of the deputies that man the jail. But
again, yeah, my goal is not so much to hold John accountable, though I think he should be held accountable. My goal is to point out the 2-tier justice system and to say, is John not being held accountable because he wasn't a Trump supporter, so therefore the actions he did on that day are not seen the same?
They're acceptable? Or
is he an FBI asset?
Is he one of those assets that the FBI can't talk about to Congress because they don't know how many was on the ground?
Yeah. So I'm going with the FBI asset at this point because just to help people. Last night I was at an event with Glenn Beck, and Gail Razika is a friend of mine who hosts the event. She let me hand out a lot of flyers, even though she asked us not to formally protest because of security. But I handed out about 600 flyers to people, and everybody, when they saw that, they said, oh yeah, I remember that. But they bank on our memories being short, and there's just so much we get overwhelmed with every day that they think we're not going to remember John Sullivan. Everybody got on the Ray-Epps bandwagon there for a while and saying, what about this Ray-Epps? But everyone's kind of left John Sullivan alone, and so I thought it was time to make sure people remembered. John Sullivan crawled through a broken window. He broke a window while he was in the Capitol. He said, let's burn this. Can I say this?
You can say whatever you would like.
Okay. Let's burn this. We need to burn this shit down. While he was in the rotunda, he claimed on 2 occasions he had a knife. And so I can't even remember why he said that. I'm trying to remember what the purpose was on that. But this is all on video. This is not hearsay.
Yep.
He manipulated the police to let them move back, and so he was at the very front of the line where the young woman was killed, and he's actually the one that videotaped that.
Yep.
And you would think after that, and seeing her being killed, that whatever motivated him that day would have maybe stopped. But no, as he left the Capitol, he shouted over and over again, "They just killed a woman for no reason. They just killed a woman for no reason," to incite further rioting.
Yeah.
That was intentional.
Yeah, it seems like he is, whatever his motivations are, it seems like his motivations are to cause chaos no matter what. No matter what.
I met John in October of 2020 in New York, and I had a 4-hour conversation with him.
Really?
Yeah. You've had James Sullivan on your program.
We've had both of them. We had John on,
So
and we've had James on 3 or 4 times.
So part of this documentary that Jade Sacker was doing on the two of them took them to New York, and I went along for this particular segment. And I'll just kind of put this out there on James too, because I stood up for James for a long time, but James was all about clickbait, not about really resolving and helping us come together as a people and as a nation. And so one of the families that had invited and paid our way to go there, they made very clear to James that John was never to know where they lived or have their address. But James manipulated the camera crew into having them show up at the same time at these people's home.
Oh.
Yeah, and the lady was furious. She came out and she just ripped James up one side and down the other. I went over to Jade and John and said we probably ought to take off. This particular family was really interesting. They're Italian. I mean, for here in Utah, most of us would think that they're probably part of the mob or something.
Oh, yeah?
But they very nice family.
They owned a garbage business.
A limousine company or.
Oh, yeah. Mob.
So,
That's right up there with
anyway.
garbage disposal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they meant business, and I thought, we better be out of here. So I hopped in the car with Jade Sacker and John, and so we drove to this country club that actually Jade had reserved to do this meeting between the two brothers. And so I talked to John on the way out there, and then I don't know what happened, but it took everybody else about 3 hours to get there. And so John and I spoke the whole time, and so I had a chance to kind of get kind of a lay of the land on him, on exactly who is he. Throughout our conversation, he definitely made it very clear he was an anarchist. Antifa, he even went about to tell me, why Antifa dresses the way that they do. And it's like, well, it's not rocket science, John. I think we all get that they don't want held accountable for their actions. And so in the process, so this was a lengthy conversation, and with no point did he ever say I'm a journalist. But again, let's go back to January 6th. He's trying to claim this journalist tag. And as a matter of fact, I debated his dad for about 4 hours. I went to Tooele and met with his mom and dad. And this is after January 6th. His dad kept trying to say, go ahead.
What are his parents like?
I mean, they're nice people. I mean, it's a Caucasian military couple that adopted 4 black sons, and I think they, are decent people.
Okay.
But his dad was pretty adamant that John was a journalist, and I said, no, journalists don't behave that way. And I've met your son prior to January 6th, and he was not a journalist.
Yeah, and you know what? He could have even thought in his mind he was a journalist, but instigating is the opposite of journalism.
Yeah.
Journalism reports on what happened. They don't make stuff happen. But then again, under that same note, Don Lemon and as far as Sean Hannity, they aren't journalists either, because they are instigators.
Sean Hannity doesn't claim to be a journalist.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Anyway, sorry.
Sean, yeah. So anyway, I just, again, I don't think John ought to spend 20 years in prison, but I don't think the other people should be spending 20 years or 16 years or 12 years or 4 years in prison either.
Nope.
There was only a few handful of people that should have had some consequences of their behavior. And another thing that frustrated me on January 6th, there was, speaking of Antifa, they weren't, quote, Antifa colors, but there was a lot of people wearing face masks on January 20th. Do we know if any of those people have been arrested? Because they didn't make them disclose their facial identity when they exited, made them leave the Capitol.
Yeah.
And then there's that whole group of people that were at the Capitol before anybody got there that were all dressed in black with their face covered too. So there's, no accountability. You can tell a Trump supporter because they had a Trump hat on and they didn't have a face mask on. And so anybody that had their faces covered, I'm going to have to assume is Antifa or some instigators from the FBI or other law enforcement.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of people that had their faces covered that day.
I would tend to agree. And judging by the way Antifa got away with just about everything, I'm going to lay it out right now. Right now, the FBI is going to have to work to make me change my mind on thinking that the FBI is just an agent for government authoritarian change. That's just, they're going to have to, they're not an arm of any kind of justice system that I would recognize. They're not.
I'm going to take you back almost 7-8 years ago. Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General of the United States at that time, after she left office, she did an interview and she said there will be blood on the streets. Hillary Clinton in 2017, prior to the 2018 elections, said the Democrats don't take back the House, there will be blood on the streets. They know that they have the ability to call into action Antifa and these militants.
Well, yeah,
they causes chaos.
They've been indoctrinating an army in their colleges for the last, probably the last 25 years when the colleges became ideologically one-sided. They had zero intellectual diversity in colleges. And yeah, they've just been building an army. And every FBI agent is a student of those colleges. And then we wonder why if you're going to make it so someone has to go through the re-education camp for, teens and post-teens, tweens, whatever you call them, if they have to have that in their repertoire to be a part of your organization is going to be a re-educated people.
So you're speaking about the universities, but
yes.
The universities not only educated our FBI, they educated our teachers, our K through 12 teachers.
Yeah, they're doing good too.
All of our K through 12 teachers are, they've been programmed on critical race theory and all these bad policies that now are being taught to kids K through 12. And so our organization, my nonprofit, Path Forward Utah, that does an outreach to minorities, and we have real problems. I mean, the conservatives, we don't ever have a ground game, and so that's a problem. We don't think long term. We have no offensive strategies, and we're always on the defense when it comes to race. But so our organization is the ground game, and we get in and work with inner city communities, minorities, and try to, there's problems that we need to solve. And in America, if we're going to heal our nation, we've got to overcome and stop letting the media divide us on race, which means we need to be rubbing shoulders with people and becoming friends and understanding what the problems are that need solved. And I was going somewhere, but my ADHD brain just kicked in. So with that, with Path Forward Utah, one of our goals is we've been taking on critical race theory K through 12, and also taking on the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at the university. And so this Friday, I'll put a shout out at UVU, which has become one of the wokest universities in the state of Utah. We are having Mr. Robert Woodson come, and the Woodson Foundation and Path Forward Utah are partnering in hopes to show the rest of the nation what we can do when we come together and and worked in a pragmatic way to fix the problems that people are facing.
How do you take care of the? I can see a pathway to take care of DEI in elementary school, but how do you take care of it in colleges? What does that pathway look like?
Well, you need to get rid of the actual program that is heavily funded. And again, a lot of this started with COVID. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars that went in to these universities and K through 12 that implemented these very divisive programs on a large scale. And so, I mean, these universities received millions of dollars to implement these DEI programs. And so the actual program itself, I'm all for clubs. If a student wants to have a Latino club, an LGBT club, a Black club, have a club. But as far as like an organization on taxpayer dollars that's treated differently, you know, where you're going to treat one group of students different than another group of students based on their race or their gender or their sexual orientation, that's what I'm against.
I
now,
agree.
If you want to base a program on zip code, for example, my office is in downtown Ogden, 84401. The odds are, if you're in this zip code, the likelihood, whether you're white or Latino, you're Black or you're Asian, you might need some financial assistance in school. If somebody has anxiety, it doesn't matter if you're gay or you're straight or you're Black or you're brown or Caucasian, you might need some extra help on some hurdles on overcoming some issues in college, in the college atmosphere. And so I would like to see those programs become need-based and not identity-based.
With your experience in the minority community here in Utah, do you notice that has the Black community forgiven the Democrats for the past historical atrocities, or are they just uneducated on what has occurred historically?
I'm going to take you back to our first part of our conversation. That most people knew who John Sullivan was right after January 6th. But 3 years later, they don't. And so I just don't think that most people are aware. Black or, I mean, it's just one of those things that because it's been, 60 years ago or 50 years ago when, where more minorities or more Blacks were Republican, most just don't understand that it's just become part of their DNA, part of who they are. One of the things that I always point out to Black Americans is like Latinos, and Joe Biden even said this in a speech, a year and a half, 2 years ago. He was talking to, and he said Latinos are more diverse in their thought processes than Blacks. And I thought, man, what a slap in the face, but he was stating the truth. But if I was Black, I'd be really agitated with that. But Latinos vote is about 45-55 split. Hopefully this year it's going to be a 50-50 or majority conservative. The Black vote has been historically for decades now a 90-10 split. And that disparity allows all kinds of manipulation in our media. And so, but for the Blacks to have a powerful vote, they have to be fluid in their vote.
I would argue a lot of that reason is because of a manipulated media. Because in the 60s, during the Civil Rights Movement, 100% of the Republicans voted, everyone gets the same rights. It was Democrats that were split.
Yeah.
But the media only talked about the Democrats that were pro everyone getting civil rights. And if any Black American was to look at that, they would go, holy cow, this is insane. Because it was the Republicans all voted, yes, give them all their rights. Yes, strike down Jim Crow. All the Republicans across the board voted that way all through the 60s, but they come out of there smelling like the people who was anti. The only time that the Republicans were anti anything was during FDR's Farm Bill, but the Republicans were just against an expansion of government. That was it. They weren't against giving, they were against it being in existence anyway, which I would argue now they have a point where farmers are paid to destroy their crops and not be a part of the free market system. So, hindsight 2020.
Well, you know what they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Every time.
And I really feel like there are some people with good intentions when it comes to these policies that they think, there's been some injustices done. We live in a predominantly LDS state. I'm happen to be LDS, returned missionary.
Where'd you go?
However,
Where was your mission?
in Canada, Alberta, Canada.
Oh, you went
Jordan
to
Peterson's home state.
you went to a communist country. Well, my grandfather was born in Roberta, Alberta,
Yeah.
a little town of
And it was, this was 35 years ago, 36 years
So
ago.
it wasn't communist yet.
No,
was-
it's actually extremely conservative.
It still is. Alberta is a very conservative
Yeah,
state.
if it had a
Canada.
population more than Wyoming, it might make a difference in the great nation up there.
So I'm going to put I shouldn't say my foot in my mouth, but I'm going to speak my truth here. The LDS Church needs to be more forthcoming. A lot of our racial issues, though we're only 1.5% black in our state, a lot of the issues come because of historical racism in our state. The church back in 2010, I believe, wrote an essay and put it on their website that basically stated that the reason blacks couldn't hold a priesthood was because of the racism that existed during Brigham Young. Now they're teaching this to our young people in seminary, and the reason I know this is because my son, who just tried on the Trump-Tater character for you, came home from seminary and asked me the question, well, do you know why blacks couldn't hold a priesthood? Well, I gave him the standard answer that we were told on our mission and growing up. And he said, no, that's not it. It's because Brigham Young was racist. And I said, well, where are you getting that? So that's what he was being taught in seminary. So they're teaching the younger generation one thing, where they're letting the older generation die out. They've never read that essay over the pulpit or over general conference or published it in Church News or the Ensign. And I think they need to be more forthcoming. We just need to, be honest and say, hey, we screwed up. Now, a lot of churches had similar principles in their congregation, but the LDS Church held on to it far longer than the other.
It wasn't until 1974.
78.
78, yeah. And that was a mistake on the LDS Church's part, obviously, to separate human beings out by the levels of melanin in their skin, I think is dumb. We'll just put it simply.
To be fair, a lot of congregations were.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't just the LDS Church. The
Yeah.
LDS Church held on to it the longest, and the only reason that they probably did at that point is because of the athletic programs at BYU.
They wanted to get a couple rings on them fingers. I get it.
And so, but now fast forward, we never came out and said, no, it's, we continue to teach the same philosophy. Just now blacks could be, part of the church and could hold the priesthood. I mean, they could always be part of the church, but hold the priesthood and receive temple ordinances. But what they never did is say this had nothing to do with not being as valiant in pre-existence. This had nothing to do with being descendants of Cain. But they held on to those things up until, like I said, I started a mission in 1987, 88, and that's what we still taught out in the mission field is the reasoning as to why blacks couldn't hold the priesthood prior to 1978. So we just need to be forthcoming. But instead of being forthcoming, and this is where is that the church is pushing for bad policy. And I would be okay and just say, it's part of history, but they're pushing for bad policy. They're listening to more, BYU. There's just a lot of bad policy that I think the LDS Church is leaning towards. And so that's my frustration, because it shouldn't be the taxpayers, it shouldn't be the citizens of Utah having to pay the price for historical wrongs.
Yeah, well, as my dad puts it, my dad's a devout member of the church and, temple, hamana. He says, what you have to remember is the church is a corporation first and a religious organization second. And, that's a pretty clear way to put it.
Yeah, but I'm going to agree with him on that, but I'm going to say the same thing I would say about Coca-Cola or other corporations, that we have the right to push back on that.
Yeah, what you have to do is you have to quit consuming their product.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
And I am
with a religious, yeah. How do you do that with the religious organization?
And if the Democrat Party can snuggle up so closely to the black community the way that they are today, with what has happened in historical grievances towards the black community from the Democrat Party, I'm sure that somehow, some way, the LDS Church can repair this grievance from the history. And I don't think that you have that far to go in comparison to what the Democratic Party had to overcome. And look at them now. So there's a path forward somehow.
Well,
hey, speaking of Path Forward, that is the name of our nonprofit, the Path Forward.
yeah. And I've heard about it a few times. Who was we talking to that talked about it? And then I talked to someone. It was offline, and they chatted about it. And I think it's excellent. I looked into you guys then, and I was like, that's a good thing. A little bit of outreach you guys do. You guys don't just focus on, from what I saw, you don't just focus on like political messaging, but you focus on building a community as well.
Yeah, relationship building.
Yes.
Because when you have a relationship with someone and you can understand that they have the same problems you have, and you come together to find solutions for those problems. And that's what we're going to need to do as Utahns, as Americans, if we're going to save our country.
Did you find yourself being effective yesterday at the Glenn Beck event?
In which area? Yeah, on the John Sullivan, or we also handed out flyers for our Woodson event.
Well, either or.
I think so, because it's triggering people's memory, and I didn't have a lot of time to talk to everyone, but as I did, I said, they bank on us forgetting, and we can't forget. There's certain things that we're going to have to write down and go back and check and say, did this get resolved yet? Because it's easy for those of us who aren't sitting in those prisons. And I wasn't a big advocate for what happened on January 6th, because I knew as soon as I saw it on TV, I was on, like I said, we had plane tickets bought and everything, and I almost went. But I thought, there's just nothing good that's going to come of that. But I had no clue it was going to be that bad.
It's an awful thing. January 6th is an awful thing. Though, in hindsight, looking at what happened the 2 years up to it, it's not surprising.
It was provoked, and when I'm saying where I see it was bad is I knew that it was going to kill off our movement. I knew it was going to kill our message. And the thing is, the leaders of our country, I shouldn't say the leaders of our country. We have leaders of our country. Yeah, the three-letter agencies of our country, the FBI, the CIA. They understand how group mentality works. Whether it's a Super Bowl, whether it's a hockey championship, whatever it is, if you get a group of people together that are emotionally tied to something, the chaos can erupt.
They just pulled the playbook out they used against Martin Luther King Jr. in the 60s. They pulled it out, they blew the dust off of it, and they said, we can use it here. It's the same playbook. Just fire up COINTELPRO, just go right out of that. And they did the exact same thing, and they're still doing the exact same thing. The Whitmer case in Michigan should be in the spotlight.
Yeah.
When you have 18 people tried for that, and 12 of them are either informants or agents, and the only ones that get convicted are 2 informants, that kind of tells you that was a setup for something.
Yeah, and to think our FBI wouldn't behave differently on January 6th.
Yep, and the guy who ran the Whitmer thing, guess where he went right after that?
Yeah, he went to the January 6th.
He went to D.C. to run that January 6th trial investigation. We are being set up. Our country is being taken over by the bureaucrats.
So that's why I put out this push on John Sullivan. Again, He's a 28-year-old young man. But, there's a lot of 28-year-olds that make mistakes and have to pay a price for it. But let's go back to his original thing that I think he should pay the price for, is what happened in Orem in June of 2020. He didn't watch, a lot of people don't know this, but he didn't watch just Ken Dudley get shot. Before Ken Dudley was shot, another young man and his son had that gun brandished at them. They called 911. John reported that. He didn't tell the shooter to put the gun away or to leave the event. Then he watched Ken Dudley get shot. And then after Ken Dudley got shot, another woman drove by in which they broke her window out, and again the gun was brandished. So three times. And John Sullivan videotaped all three and never said that this participant at his rally, at his protest, should leave his protest.
Oh, no. His James, happens to believe that John put him up to that.
And I would not put that past him. I'm not saying one way or the other. But regardless, he has some accountability in that. And now, first it was felony charges. They were dropped to misdemeanors. Now the charges have been dropped altogether. And so in addition to asking, is John an FBI asset? And that's where I feel like John became an FBI asset, is that at some point the FBI approached him in order to get those charges dropped, come be an asset for us. Even the people on the left thought John was an FBI asset.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to back up one thing on John, because the Proud Boys, and I'm not an Alex Jones fan either, but one of his people just was sentenced to prison. That person never entered the Capitol.
I know. Yeah.
And so John encouraged people to come out, not in one message, not in two, not in three, like 4 to 5 messages, encouraged his Antifa friends to come out dressed as Trump supporters to cause chaos and mayhem. 5 times. So he was just as culpable as the
I think it's Owen Schreier is his name.
Yeah. And
though I am a fan of Alex Jones, I think he's hilarious.
Well, I have to say he's been right on so many things. I should have said I used to not be a fan of Alex Jones, and I'm starting to look at back and go, oh my gosh, he was right about that.
The frogs are gay.
I just think he's just so entertaining when he gets yelling and tears his shirt off. You can't help but love it. But
mainly I've seen him on Joe Rogan. And, on the Joe Rogan podcast.
He's good on Joe Rogan when he starts talking about interdimensional demons.
Yeah.
But
so I'm neither a fan or not a fan, but the point being is that the person that was arrested and is going to serve prison time did far less than John did.
Yeah, he never went inside the building.
Now the FBI has its right to utilize people as informants as they see fit, do they not?
They do, but they can't be instigators of the chaos.
Yeah, they're not supposed to. You're not supposed to. Entrapment laws fall as entrapment laws do everywhere, no matter the branch or the level of justice. But I don't think the FBI shouldn't be doing the crap that they shouldn't. They shouldn't have done the stuff they did in the '60s, and they shouldn't be doing the crap they're doing now. And I don't know. How do you deal with it? Honestly, I think the FBI should be done away with. They've screwed up too many times. You can't have J. Edna Hoover's name on your building and think you're a just organization anyway. They should be done away with. They just seriously. We have U.S. Marshals. They're a functioning organization. And then we have your sheriff's departments and your local PD.
Well, you brought up an interesting point there, because I thought of during the summer of love, I thought, why are these Democrat cities allowing their cities to be destroyed by Antifa? And the reason they're allowing that is because I think eventually they don't want local law enforcement. They want federal law enforcement throughout our country.
Could be, yeah. Well, there's that. There's also pandering to their base. They've got to pander to their base. I think it goes
beyond pandering. In addition to the same people that they didn't hold accountable, now these same people filed lawsuits in these Democratic cities, and they're receiving millions in payouts.
I know BLM in New York got, what was it? Something like $3 million. BLM,
Yeah.
You know, buy large mansions, got $3 million from New York because they rioted and then they got paid for it. It's insane. It is. We have lost the plot. You know what? I'm going to sit back and enjoy it. I'm popping popcorn. This is a clown show. I'm at the Three Ring Circus. I've got to recognize it for what it is. If you're in the collapse of Rome, enjoy the circus.
Well, and I'm kind of on the other side of that. I believe that there's power that we have to create miracles, and some of those miracles have got to be focused on stopping what the media tries to do. And they are the elite, whoever. It's not the media. The media is just speaking the words that they're paid to speak on dividing us on race.
Well, hey, speaking of the three-letter agencies, what's that guy's name? The Anderson Cooper? Where did he intern in college? Anyone at home right now, just look up Anderson Cooper, Wikipedia, look at where he interned in college, and then tell me Mockingbird isn't real.
So I have one more fun fact to give y'all, because I know you have another incredible guest coming on.
Yeah.
And I know she hasn't quite, she's entertaining the thought of running for U.S. Senate.
Mm-hmm.
And, I hope she announces and she runs, because she's an incredible individual. But I want to ask you if y'all know what happened 3 days before George Floyd.
3 days before George Floyd.
This is very important. to
Yeah,
understand
what happened? Lay it on us.
That was the day that Joe Biden went on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God.
Oh, and he said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
And I'm going to tell you why that's important, is because black people were peacefully protesting on Monday. They were peacefully protesting on Tuesday. They were peacefully protesting on Wednesday. But you know what the black community was talking about?
What's
Even
that?
with George Floyd, they were talking about Joe Biden telling blacks that they couldn't think for themselves. First, it started with conservative blacks, but then it got into the entertainment. It got into athletes, and that was still being spoken of. And so what did they have to do? Hillary Clinton, like I said, Hillary Clinton, Loretta Lynch, they all knew that they could call in Antifa. Antifa came in and turned peaceful protest into chaotic riots.
Well, I think we should do away with the name Antifa, and we should declare them for what they are, the militant wing of the Democrat Party. And that's it.
Or I don't even know Democratic Party. I almost wonder if our three-letter agencies don't have some control over when they come out.
Oh, that's the intelligence wing of the Democrat Party. You know, and then you've got Joe Biden, the poop in a diaper wing of the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party has a lot of wings.
Okay, I'll agree with you on that one. But
Yeah.
but a lot of people don't put that piece of the puzzle together, and it's important that they do, because everybody when they saw the video of George Floyd, whether you thought the guy was a crook, an evil person or not, most all Americans looked at that video and said that was wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think many Americans disagreed with something need to happen there. So that
Yeah.
wasn't the issue where the riots started. The riots started because they had to take people's attention off of, because the Democrats can't afford to lose the black vote. A 20%
Yep.
shift, blacks going from a 10% Republican to a 30% Republican, that's 2.8% of the national population. That changes elections forever.
That just happened in Louisiana a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So
That's why.
what
yeah.
I'm saying, and it may be that they're looking around and going, I know Joe Biden's saying this economy's good, but my cereal box got smaller and it costs twice as much as it used to.
Absolutely.
Because that's where we're at.
Well, the economy
You were
got good
asking
for
about blacks
someone.
waking up. I think they're starting to wake up.
They need to. Now, I want you, now, before we started recording, you showed me that you've got some barbecue sauce you're selling. Will you do me a favor and plug that real quick and tell people where they can find it?
I'll start out with this one. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm going to send both of you a set of this. This is my Fire and Fury, the fearless flavor of 2024.
Fire and Fury. And now, what would you suggest someone would use that for? Would that be best, like if you're making wings or
Wings, everything. I mean, I eat it on everything, but this is like a honey habanero.
Ooh.
Kind of sweet and hot.
So that'd also good, like if you're making like an Asian type dish.
Yes.
That'd make it really.
It's not quite Asian. There's no teriyaki, anything like that.
Okay, well, I mean, honey habanero. Yeah, that's a good mix.
And another thing I just want to point out, it's gluten-free, no MSG, and no high fructose corn syrup.
Oh, hold Dave back.
That's one of the questions we're going to be asking our candidate tonight is where she stands on that part of the farm bill.
Dave is big on the war against
Corn syrup.
Corn syrup.
Okay.
All right, Fire and Fury. What's next?
Bold and beautiful, make meat great again.
Make meat great again.
And when I came up with this title 4 years ago, it was kind of just fun because it kind of patterned the Make America Great Again. But never did I think in my wildest dreams that people would seriously be entertaining killing off a third of the population of our pork or our cattle and thinking that we should go to eat bugs.
How crazy was that?
It just wasn't in my imagination when I came up with that.
How crazy was that during COVID when you saw up in Idaho the mass graves of pigs? And them just dumping buckets of milk down a gutter. I was beside myself, and I told my friends, I'm like, this is going to cause a problem down the road. You wait and see.
Well, you look at, I'm sure y'all reported on Sri Lanka 2 years ago, a year and a half ago.
When they went into riots because they went GMO free for the or not GMO free,
2/3 of their crop.
Yeah, and
they didn't use nitrogen based.
Yeah, they went out with nitrous, which is what they were trying to do in Holland over the last couple of years. In Holland, their farmers formed a party and won their, I don't know what you call it over there. Their Holland.
In addition, in Holland, they didn't just want to get rid of nitrogen-based fertilizer. They wanted to kill off a third of their population of livestock.
Yeah, they wanted farms to be smaller. They wanted farms to only be owned by like 30% of the current farmers, and they wanted to take that land and pull Lahaina on it, where, this land's now government land and we get a profit off of it. No, I'm telling you, everyone, the plans for the machines are online. You pull a blade up into the air with the rope and you let the blade go, and it's a fine carrot cutter. Anyways, go on. You got more sauce.
Got one left. I changed the name on this one. But,
and this is a rub?
Yeah, right wing rub. And you can't really see the rub. I got to kind of turn around.
Rub's written behind the potato.
Yeah.
And for people watching, this one's a rub. It's a light colored rub. So that'd be great with a light color, I would think. Pork or poultry.
Oh, it's good on everything. It's good in eggs. It's good on your popcorn. Put it in the butter of your popcorn. It's fantastic.
Oh, really?
It's good on ribs. I mean, it really is good on everything. But it's the tagline. It's a seasoning that rubs you right.
I like it.
Yeah,
so
I like it.
Nice.
If you're having your family over at Thanksgiving time, put a little of this on the turkey. And you might become a closer knit family. Perfect.
Hey, can you do me a favor real quick? Where do people go to find this if they want to buy it?
TrumpTater.com.
TrumpTater.com. All right, and go on there, check out our offerings. And then would you be okay if maybe here in a few weeks after it shows up, if we cooked up a batch of wings and did a taste test on air and you joined us?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love that.
That'd be great. Yeah. That'd be great.
And more than anything, in getting this product out, I mean, I hope I make money for all my causes I'm involved in, but I want to get that definition out. Can I say the definition of Trump-Tater one more time?
Yes, of course.
Okay. A Trump-Tater is someone who outclasses, outshines, and outperforms, defeats someone or something, a dependable and exemplary person. And I just feel like, all Americans right now ought to be grateful that we have somebody. He's not perfect. I don't think we're trying to elect a saint to president, but he's someone that will stand, as he mentioned, stands between us and them, and we need somebody to do that right now, because those people sitting in jails right now for January 6th, the gentleman that just got 7 months in prison for a meme today.
Yeah, because didn't he put up a thing that's like If you want to vote for Hillary, call this number.
Text your vote to this number. I mean, I mean, who wouldn't know that that's sarcasm? But
I'm okay with it
7
because-
months in prison.
Because if they didn't know, I don't want them deciding my future. I'm just playing it.
Yeah. So, I mean, Americans need to wake up. We think that this is somebody else. We think those January 6 people are different than we are.
Yeah.
Again, I don't agree with what they did because it sure set us far back. But at the same time, if we were in that group setting and we had provocateurs that were pushing us and our emotions and pushing us forward, we could have been in that spot. We could have made a sarcastic remark on our Facebook account joking around, and we could be facing 7 years or 7 months in prison.
Yeah.
And so we can't think it's it's those crazy Trump supporters out there. Initially, I was not a Trump supporter, and the reason I became one is because Trump became the first Republican that actually reached out and asked for the Black American vote, that put opportunity zones in neighborhoods that needed their neighborhood uplifted, that created economy where Black Americans were employed at a higher rate.
Do you remember how he did that?
By lowering a lot of the restrictions.
He pulled
and
government
regulations.
back. I'm telling you, government is the anchor that's dragging us to the bottom of the ocean.
Well, Trump in 2016, when he was running, he said the way to stop racism is through economics, and he was
Bingo.
right.
100%.
Help people achieve the American dream. More
Yep.
Blacks were entrepreneurs under Trump.
Yep.
And then he passed, I've been a big advocate of prison reform for years. Trump actually made that happen. So
I think he needs to go further. I think we need someone to go further. We need more than prison reform. We need Justice Department reform. We need to have our courts be open and clear. You shouldn't be guilty decided by on what lawyer you can afford. You should be guilty on the facts. Guilt or innocent should be decided on the facts, on the merits.
And you shouldn't have a two-tiered justice system in that one type of drugs that poor people use are punished at a higher rate than a type of drugs that rich people use.
We don't need to go into Joe Biden's past bills that he passed in the 90s. We don't need to talk about that, though. We don't. I mean, come on. Joe Biden, he's only been in government for 100,000 years, and every bad law that came down had his signature all over it. But, Jamie, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie.
And again, that's TrumpTater.com, right?
Yeah, and I got to make sure they spell it right because it's not like an O or like a dictator. It's Trump and then TATER.
TrumpTater.com. And I'll bet I've got to check my spelling on there too, on the board for this. But we'll make sure, and we'll have the link right to her website in the show notes. As always, you can just go right there, plug in there, buy your sauce. And if someone wants to help you and join your organization, how do they go about that?
Pathforwardutah.com.
Pathforwardutah.com. All right, everybody, jump on that. Thanks for joining us. And then up next, of course, we've got another offering for Romney's Senate seat because we're going to be sad to lose him. But we'll be back on in about 2 minutes. Thanks again, Jamie.
Thank you. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Bye.